Welcome to the Ranchonomics Podcast, where we empower you to build a better ranch and transform your operations into a thriving business. I'm your host, John Haskell. Let's get started. All right, welcome back to the Ranchonomics Podcast. I am excited to talk with Ryan because as we've known each other over the years, he is obviously someone who's become very successful in his own right and has done some wonderful things with his family's operation. Has put a lot of effort and energy into getting better. And I really am excited to get his perspective on things today. So, Ryan, welcome to the podcast.
Well, I'm super honored. I'm a dedicated listener. I rarely miss one. I listen to lots of them 2 or 3 times, and you bring so much to the right to the seat of my tractor or the back of a horse. Great information, thought-provoking, challenging, confirming, and I really appreciate what you do because it's a great thing. You know, my grandpa didn't have this option. My dad didn't either. If they had a radio to listen to, they thought it was a good day, and we now have all this information at our fingertips. So we love the variety of topics and just really got to sing you guys great praises for your podcast. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much. It's obviously having good guests that matters. So this has been a lot of fun. So fantastic. Well, let's jump into some history. Tell us about Ryan Noble and Noble Ranch and what you guys are up to.
All righty. So going way back, my great grandpa was the oldest of 11. He lived in south central Nebraska growing up, and when he turned 18, his parents broke his plate and said, "Go make something of yourself," right? Because there was a lot of them. So in 1910, he came straight east, right down the 40th parallel, which is the Kansas-Nebraska line, the baseline for all you folks that really like to talk about land measurement. He came 9 miles south of Yuma, Colorado, took a look around, threw a stake in the ground, and homesteaded right here in 1910. I'm actually recording this from about 30 yards from where he built his original house. So
wow, that's cool. Good. The folks that settled eastern Colorado, I will just say, were a slightly different breed, right?
There you go. Yeah.
Kind of like when the Mormons looked at Salt Lake and said, boy, this could become paradise. Like you had to have a vision of what the future might look like, right?
Absolutely. So I like to say that the government gave him 160 acres and we might have paid too much for it. So anyhow, you keep fast forwarding, his primary focus on the property through the years was a lot of dryland row crops, which you both know is probably not a good idea in eastern Colorado, and especially we're talking maximum till days and a lot of hand labor, and that's the environment my dad grew up in, and honestly, when he had the chance to take the reins in the 1970s, late 70s, early 80s, the first thing he did was start planting grass because he's like, the sand is wore out. We're really sandy where we're at, and 16 to 18 inches of moisture is average, whatever that means.
The variance is from like 0 to 14, right? Like, I don't know how you come up with an average like that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's some government math in there somewhere. But anyhow, so my dad started moving towards more grazing livestock and returning the soil to more of a native state. And about the time he took over this deal, my grandpa passed away. He had some debt. My dad just kind of stepped into this deal, which turned out to be very untimely because he tried to grow and take care of family obligations right through the middle of the 80s. And that's when I grew up. So that was my formidable time. If my mom hadn't had a good job in town, this place wouldn't be here. I mean, there is no way. And the other side is it wasn't a great big scale. So, through God's provision and just my mom having a job, and it wasn't a massive scale. They just kind of hunkered down, made it through the 80s, and it made a great impression on me. I knew what, I'm not going to say poverty, but I knew what hard times looked like. We used to go to the neighbors' farm sales for recreation. It was sad, gut wrenching, but we at least we could go and try to bid on something. So I go to high school. My guidance counselor sat me down and said, "You do not go into agriculture. I forbid it. You can play football or basketball in college, get a scholarship, get into education, get into finance. You do not want to go into agriculture." But I had a tremendous ag teacher that was very encouraging and had a lot of foresight and just challenged us all the time. Better, bigger, all the time. And it didn't matter where you were at. And so he really helped to stoke up that passion that I had for agriculture, and my parents were incredibly supportive. So I graduated high school. I went to 2 years of college, decided I had enough of that. And, I could either go on to university and go into massive debt to pay for that, or I could probably go buy some land. So I bought some land, got busy, added some cows, and we really haven't looked back since.
And this was in the 90s?
This was in the early to mid 90s. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
So,
okay, great.
The second set, actually the first set of calves that I sold out of my cows that were running on my land, we no-sailed them on Superior for 68 cents a pound.
Yeah, love it. Good for you.
Yeah, it was our families. We all put together and came up with a load of steers to put on Superior. And we no-sailed them at 68 cents, and the guy called back 10 minutes later and said, would you take 69 cents for 550-pound steers? And we said, yeah, we'll do that. And it's a good thing because they'd about 55 cents in the sale barn.
Took a bit of a risk there.
Yeah, it took about 700 hours of labor for me to make my land and cattle payment, because that's not a lot of money. So put my head down, went to work, married a fantastic woman. She's a teacher just like my mom. We started getting busy with this deal, had a chance to greatly expand in 2004, and that's when we started stepping on the gas. Bought the neighbor's place. They'd passed away, and we bordered it on the north side, the south side, and another pretty big chunk of land. And that's when I really had to start paying attention to the economics, mostly because this ranch was a break-even purchase. We had to figure out how to create some margin to make the payment. But we were emotionally attached to this property. We knew what we wanted to do. We were all on board, my parents and my wife and myself. And that was the birth of Noble Ranch LLC, the operating company. So I suppose when I got out of high school, my dad probably had just right at about 100 head of cows. My grandma had some cattle and a couple of neighbors and stuff like that we helped to manage a little bit. But anyhow, since then, you fast forward to today, we have about 100 head of cows out on shares, but we have about 2,600 head of breeding heifers standing right here on the ranch. We've got grass for all of them, and our big deal now is heifer development. We had a pretty sizable cow herd back through into the late, right before 19 and 20, and then the drought really came in and slammed us hard 3 years straight. And I had to make the decision. We're pretty nerdy about our grazing, and I'm basically made the decision that we're going to have to figure out how to meet all of our land payments and capital needs without turning a cow out on grass, because that was the point we were at. I wasn't going to jeopardize our ecological situation. So that's what led us to the heifer development. We'd been developing some heifers, but that we liquidated the cows and we went all in on heifer development. I've learned some pretty big things, not only about the cattle business, but about myself since we took the leap. One thing we figured out, we had a lot of pride, and that pride was that our identity was locked up with those cows. What are you guys? Well, we're cow people, right?
Right.
Well, that was a pretty tough one to come over. I mean, my mom...
Yeah, you sell all the cows is a tough day for that, because you're selling your identity, right?
That's exactly right. And it was tough. But the liberating side that we've also found out is with the same labor force, same set overheads, we can run at least 250 to 350% of the number of animals with just basically the same sets of, I'm not going to call them fixed costs, but a similar set of costs. So we almost unintentionally put a great big margin curve into this thing. Over the last 2 or 3 years, the cows have really peaked. I'm going to just say even in the last 18 months, as far as, gross margin per unit, stuff like that. But these yearlings have really had a lot of margin in them, especially if we break it back down to like gross margin per acre or gross margin per $100,000 of capital invested. It's really been a great thing. And I probably analyze our gross margin 4 to 5 times a year. And I have all that data going back to 2013, I believe. So it's kind of fun to look at all that data through 2 cattle cycles now. Yeah, the other thing I've learned is that we really worked for our cows. They were the boss. We were the employee. We were there when they needed us, and we had built a business that they needed us a lot. Since the cows left, what we found is we can operate a pretty sizable operation, and we can do it from 7 a.m. in the morning till 5 p.m. in the afternoon, and maybe just do chores on Saturday and Sunday. So our workload is just gone down dramatically. Our quality of life is greater than it's ever been. My parents are 80 and 81 years old, and their quality of life, they are absolutely living their best life. And that, to me, is what this is all about. My children, when we had cows, probably was a 30% chance they were coming back. Since we've made a lot of changes, really put ourselves first and put the business to serve us, they're very interested in agriculture now. So
yeah, wonderful.
That's really changed a lot of paradigms and added to our quality of life. And, it's just been the worst possible thing that we could imagine was the drought and having to sell cows. And the greatest blessing we've had is that we sold the cows.
I love it. Good. In our trials, we find out what we're made of, right? And we're softened a little to do some learning.
Yeah, absolutely.
Want to sharpen your business skills without leaving the ranch? Our Ranch Right webinars cover everything from the financial basics to business strategy and tax prep, all taught by our own ranching and finance experts from the team at Ranch Right. Join us online, ask questions, and get practical tools you can put to work tomorrow. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn to receive updates on our next session, and catch up on all of our past webinars by visiting and subscribing to Ranch Right LLC on YouTube. I'd like to talk a little. So it's interesting to me. I assumed you had a bunch of college from our discussions. You're clearly a nerd, so that works out. I just figured college would be a natural place for you. So tell me a little about your sort of educational journey in this process, because I'm a little curious about your dad's conversion to grass. We might talk about that another day, but tell us about what's helped you to really learn how to run a great business like you're doing.
So I'm going to go back a little bit further. So we bought a lot of property. I mean, we leveraged really hard in 2004. I mean, we almost tripled. Had a fantastic banker, and he was very sage, and he said, "I will lend you money for the cows, or I will lend you money for the property, but I will not lend you money for both because it will not work. There's too much risk."
Good for him.
Yeah, he's a good guy. So
words that probably echo now, right?
So we took the land route, which was great. I also had my college roommate. He and his father leased us. We needed like 250 cows to fill this property up beyond what we were already running. And I called him up and I said, I need some cows. What do you think? He says, I'll call you back. And he called me back in an hour and 20 minutes. And he says, you're going to have 6 loads of cows in 10 days. And he and his father, kind of a Wally Olson-esque situation where they were looking to put some cows out on lease. So we got approximately 22-year-olds, 23-year-olds, 24-year-olds. I mean, they just went right through the meat of the herd, and they sent us a herd of cows and put them out on shares. And that was a watershed breakthrough moment for us because we could operate. I mean, you look at it economically, and what happened, we didn't have to come up with anything but direct costs for 11 months to operate this ranch. That's a big deal. That's a huge deal. They also were partners with us, so we rode the market, the inflation and deflation down. It didn't really matter to us what their cost of those cows were because all we did was give them value back on a percentage of the calf crop. So that kept us out of buying too high of a dollar cow or too cheap of a cow. So we played that for several years, and we really built on that because that business model allowed us to buy land or lease land and put lease cows on it, and everybody got a paycheck, and the bank was satisfied. We were a solid break-even company. Honestly, at that time, we were more of a land company.
Yep.
That used the cows. In 2013, I was loading a set of cows early in the morning, some rebreeds going to a guy in Nebraska. Cows weren't loading very good, blah, blah, blah. I jump up there. I'm like, what's wrong? He's like, these cows won't go into the belly of this pot. I'm like, okay. And it was dark and it was cold. And basically, so I looked in this cow. She's a nice home-raised 3-year-old open cow. And I'm like, oh, she'll walk down there. So I step into this pot. I grab this hot shot. I'm going to shock the cow in front of this cow that wouldn't go down. Unbeknownst to me, he'd been shocking the snot out of her. So I reach up and buzz the cow in front. And the cow that I had been petting on the hip kicked me in the knee, bam, 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 bam.
Oh,
Yeah, she quit right before she got to my face. In a nutshell, I spent 6 months in the house. Reconstructive knee surgery, dislocated ribs, but I've never felt such peace in my life because I'm like, God, if you wanted me dead, I'd have been dead right there, easy,
right.
done.
She had the chance. Yeah.
You had the chance, you got something else lined out for me. So here I am. The org chart at that time had my name in every box. I'm like, this is not sustainable. If something happens to me, I put my parents at risk. I put my wife at risk. I put my kids at risk. This whole ranch may not exist. So I really got interested in looking at ranching for profit. And a year later, I went to ranching for profit. And that gave me the tools to make economic decisions through gross margin accounting. What would normally take me 6, 8, 10 hours to play through a scenario with all the costs, the revenue, the expenses, the risk. Once I got my head wrapped around it, I could do it in 10 minutes. That was a big turning point in my life. Immediately after that, we joined Executive Link.
Where'd you take the RFP school the first time?
In Colorado Springs.
Yeah. Okay. And that was in what you said, 14, 15?
I think it was in 15 because I had to have surgery in 14.
Yeah. All right.
Due to my accident. So yeah.
Good. And then and you've been in EL ever since, right?
We have been in EL ever since. And here's the fun part. People look at me and they're like, how long you been in EL? And I said, well, I think we're starting our 10th year. And they're like, man, you're a slow learner. And I'm like, well. So just to expound on that a little bit, it's kind of fun because I think when people go to ranching for profit and then eventually join EL, one of the biggest reasons is because they have a problem they want to fix. And if it's a big problem, it takes 1 to 3 years in EL, and they kind of get through and they fix their problem. And they're like, wow, this is
Life
awesome.
is good. Yeah.
Life is good. And they quit EL. And the people that don't, then they have this little transition spot, maybe year 4 or 5, where they're like, should I really be in EL? Because we put out all the fires. My business is performing well, blah, blah, blah. But what we've seen is that about year number 5, 6, somewhere in there, is there's a great big mind shift and you're not playing defense anymore and you flip over to an offensive strategy. Oh my Lord. It is just incredible how many levers you can find when you start playing offense.
So, and to put this in terms, I think I understand what you mean. And what I see is that we stop messing around with little cuts to overheads and direct costs and that sort of thing. And now we think about how much money could we make? Let's play with the income side of this, right?
Yep. So one of our biggest holdups with going from cows to yearlings, our cows pretty much operated on overheads. Land, they grazed, a few direct costs. So let's just run a little scenario out there. So you got 800 cows running on overheads and you're supplementing them 20 cents a day. It doesn't take a lot of money to operate.
Right. Yeah. Your gross margin is very, very high.
Very high, very good. As soon as we moved to yearlings, the first thing that happened was we needed 3 times the number of animals. And with our business model, we get ball and calves in September, October, November. We feel most years there's quite a bit of value add by weaning them ourselves, putting that weight on ourselves. So we'll wean calves 40 to 90 days, kind of depending on what resources we have to go to graze. So you have 3 times the animal. That takes a lot of cash. And then you start, instead of using overheads to run these animals, you're using direct costs to run these animals. So you start plugging in 3 times the animals and you're spending $1.50, $2 a day on them. Our biggest problem with going to yearlings was taking the leap of faith that we could literally 10x our operating note. That is a tough sell, especially to ourselves. What we did, though, with a lot of help from our EL board, we danced with this deal for quite a while, and then the drought finally came along and just slammed the door shut on cows. We traded out of our cows. We had some great trades right during COVID there. We had just sold some pairs. Everybody kept up with their verbal contracts. We were selling pairs for like $2,100, $2,200 and buying $700 heifer calves. It was the greatest trade we'll probably ever make.
Yeah. Oh, you got a lot of time in front of you, young man. You can keep trying to beat it.
But we didn't lock up. But also going into that, we just knew, we're fairly debt averse. My wife doesn't really like to borrow money unless I can absolutely prove to her without a doubt, this is a no-brainer. This is a 5X, you know. So anyhow, we made the big change. We rode that thing through. And then in 2022, we went to I don't know if it was the first ever or second ever economics intensive. Jordan Steele, Dallas Mount, and Dave Pratt taught it. So anyhow, it's like December of 22, or I think that's when it was. My wife and I went there. They locked us in a room as advertised, and 3 days later, we came out the other side with a business plan. And I really like to, I'm a firm believer in a smart man learns from his mistakes, but a wise man learns from everybody else's. So
yes,
there's like 18, 19 other businesses in there, and we all put our business plan up on the wall. There were only 3 businesses in that room that had an economic profit.
Mm-hmm.
And it was worrisome,
Yeah.
And I put our cow-calf enterprise up on the wall because we really would have not minded getting back in the cow business because of the great days ahead. And I showed that to everybody, and it was in the black, man. It was good. We showed an economic profit of I think it was $150,000, $180,000. And for your listeners, the difference between an economic profit and a cash profit is, you're just addressing the overheads that aren't a cash cost.
Right.
Just the stuff that if you rented 100% of it, you would write a check for it.
So you have opportunity to rent, opportunity to labor, all your opportunity costs are in there, and you also capture inventory change.
Yes,
right?
sir.
So you may have retained heifers that you put on the balance sheet, but you don't necessarily have a cash cost for those, right? So it could look very different from your tax bill.
Absolutely, very different, but it does address everything. It's very fair. It's very, very forthright, and it's absolutely imperative that you have identified a difference between an economic profit and a cash profit, because at someday you're going to need to know the economics of your business.
Well, I've really become convinced you need both, because we have to be careful not to produce too much economic profit at too much cash expense, right? Because sometimes retaining all our animals is the most profitable thing, but we got to have enough to buy some beans to feed the family, right?
That's a great point, John. So I put my cows up there. There's like $150,000, $180,000 of profit. Everybody's like, "Oh, that's great, this and that." And I said, and I just tore it off the wall, and I said, "But we're not going to do that." Everybody's like, "Are you insane?" And I put the heifers up on the wall, and there's about $1.5 million economic profit. I said, "That's why we're here."
10x right there.
10x.
Love it.
So
good for you.
We put in about 40 man hours, and it cost us, with hotel and travel, probably $2,200.
Oh yeah, very good.
Pretty good ROI for educating
20, yeah.
ourselves.
So right. So what's $1.5 million divided by 22? I can't do math that small in my head. Is that 1%?
Yeah.
1.5? Or is it
So
0.1%?
we got home from that. I kept punching numbers. I mean, I basically just locked myself in the house. I'd go help do chores, but then I was in the office for several days, and when I emerged, my eyes were bloodshot, and I had a 4-day beard going on. I said, "We need to go buy 400 more calves. That's our honey hole." And we kind of kicked it around over Christmas, talked with the banker. We had plenty of room to increase our operating again. And starting on the video sales and all the stock show specials in January, I laid in 400 head of breeding type heifers that fit our program pretty well. If you will go back and look at the run up from January of 2023 till August of 2023, it was insane. Just the open heifers we made a great big jump right there. A lot of that was inflation, but also we had appreciating enterprise while that was going on.
You were adding the two of them together, right? And as we've seen, that adding appreciation can negate the effects of a falling market. When you multiply it by the effects of a rising market, it can produce unbelievable results, right? Where we've had bankers say, "Boy, we don't see result. Like, this isn't normal. What's going on here?" So awesome. Very good. All right. I've got to get kids to school. As you can see, I've got a restless one here. I want to end on one thing. Your primary educational influences, I think, if I understand correctly, are ranching for profit. You've spent a lot of time studying the sell-by thing. What else has been important to you as far as being good at what you're doing?
I read a lot. I got lots of people that send us hey, read this book about leadership or business or whatever the case may be. Knowledge-rich ranching. Every rancher on earth ought to read that.
I
It
think you
just
have
gets
to read
better
that
every
once
time
a
I read it.
year, right? That's
Yeah,
like reading the Bible, right? Every time you read it, there's
absolutely.
just more and more stuff there. So,
Yep.
yeah.
I probably get this from my mom. She was in education. She's had a teaching license in 7 different decades. Think about that.
Wow. Good for her.
But she's always had to increase her level of education. So I don't care if it's a sell-by class or a ranching for profit class or something. You need to try to get smarter at least twice a year. And then having a group, it doesn't necessarily need to be an EL group, but just a group that will hold you accountable. That's a big deal.
Yep. Get those explanations in your head out into somebody, in front of somebody else, right? It's amazing how hard it is sometimes to explain your own bad ideas. So, yeah, good.
And also, life is way too short to make all your mistakes. Be in a group where you can see other people's mistakes and learn from them.
Really good. Okay. Well, Ryan, I think the story of the story of your family's ranch, the story of what you and Joella have done, really is pretty impressive. And I hope people will take that as a real inspiration. Again, I know that Yuma, Colorado is probably about the easiest place in the world to ranch. There just is no other place that works like that. But man, you guys have done a great job. And it's been through management. It hasn't been because you've inherited a bunch of oil wells. It hasn't been because your parents handed you a big deal or you had a big job in tech that, sort of fueled all this stuff. You guys have built it. And as much as you talk about your mom getting you through, the period of terrible economics as you converted from row crop to grass or your dad did, as much as those things have happened, that has really fueled you guys into a pretty amazing position. So last thing I want to ask you is, if you had that cow accident today, how different would things be? How is your business position now to really be prepared for those types of events?
Yep. So my business today, if I had this cow accident today, I would probably do most of my rehab on a beach somewhere. If I had my laptop, we'd be good.
And your operation would function completely well with you sitting on a beach with a broken knee.
It might actually function a little bit better because I would stay out of it.
I know the feeling, brother. I understand. Yeah.
Yep. I could take care of a lot of technical stuff, and the crew could easily get through all the production issues. So, yeah.
Very good. Well, Ryan, I really appreciate you joining us today. Thank you very, very much. I think what Ryan is saying over and over again is there is a huge value in continuing it. And I was incorrect. It's not 1.5%. It's 0.1.5%. That's the cost of your financial intensive against the return. So I think we do need to be continually pushing ourselves. I worked for a company once that was their one of their goals was to learn faster than inflation. And I think that's a pretty awesome way to think about it. If we are not pursuing new knowledge, if we're not reevaluating our own situation, if we're not in the business of the business, I think we put ourselves at a real disadvantage. People like you that are willing to dive into the numbers and really think things through thoroughly and pursue new ways of thinking have a huge unfair advantage. And as you're part of the world, which I think of as the most drought-prone part of our country, as you do that in a place like that and prove that's correct, it's a pretty amazing example. So thank you for being willing to share that.
Appreciate it, John. Thank you so much.
You are very welcome. Well, hopefully this episode's been valuable to everybody else. I know we're glad to always talk about these types of things. There are so many good things that happen in agriculture. There's a ton of money to be made. There are lots of great opportunities. So thanks again. Thank you for tuning into the Ranchonomics podcast. We hope this episode helped you win today. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share it with a friend.